Welcome to Real Money, Real Life, the podcast where we get real about money and the messy human stuff that comes with it. I'm Linda Grizely, financial educator and your Me Money guide to financial clarity. Each week, we dive into financial concepts and money strategies, but we always tie it back to real life, emotions, mindset, and how money actually shows up day to day. If you're ready for practical tools, mindset shifts, and honest conversations that meet you where you are, not where the world thinks you should be, you're in the right place. Because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you use it. No judgment, no lectures, and definitely no putting yourself last. Hello, if you're listening, you're one of the real ones, the ones learning to rebuild, reclaim, and rise stronger after life doesn't go as planned. Today, we're talking about the financial side of divorce, the often overlooked planning, preparation, and emotional recovery that can make all the difference. We'll explore what to expect before, during, and after divorce, how to make informed decisions instead of reactive ones, and why getting clarity early can prevent costly mistakes later. My guest today brings a rare combination of technical expertise and lived experience to this conversation, helping clients move from overwhelmed to empowered. I'm welcoming today Jamie after watching his parents go through a divorce at a young age and going through a tremendously expensive and emotionally draining one himself in 2017. He launched Allegiant Divorce Solutions. It was a sister company to his traditional financial planning firm. He recognizes the challenges people face as they decide how to handle their finances relating to divorce. He did see his parents struggle, and it was challenging for him too. And looking back, he sees the mistakes he made and things that could have been avoided had he had the support of a certified divorce financial analyst, or CDFA. At present, Jamie is armed with this ever-growing knowledge and almost 20 years of financial planning experience and dedicated to helping his clients navigate divorce. Welcome, Jamie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Let's just get started. I always ask people right off the bat, what's your story? How did you decide to get into being a CDFA and divorce as your niche in financial planning?
Well, I think you hit it in the intro there as far as some of the experiences I've had in my my personal life and watching people that I know and love go through this experience themselves, and not just my parents, right? I mean, like a lot of us, we know a lot of people that have gone through this unfortunate exercise, and I just saw early on that, man, like it's a challenge. My parents had to both work multiple jobs, and they scraped by just to make ends meet. And I think in a lot of ways that's what propelled me into the world of finance and learning about investments and retirement and financial planning and all the stuff that goes along with that. And then I had always wanted to do this type of work in some form or fashion. I didn't know I was going to go all in on it like I've done now, but even years ago, I was working for a big name employer, and I had talked to them about possibly getting this designation that I have and working with folks that are going through this experience. And they were like, well, listen, kid, like, we don't do that kind of work here. We don't want to get bogged down in it. So why don't you just go make some more phone calls and get back to work? And sure enough, I listened to them at that time. And then just a few short years later, I went through my own very expensive, very challenging divorce, like you mentioned. And I learned the hard way, so to speak, that even someone that does have the background and the experience and the education in the world of finance, I still struggled, and there were different decisions that I had to make that I was really unsure of. And I didn't want to, I knew I couldn't rely on my attorney to help me make those decisions, because most attorneys don't understand this stuff. But in some ways I did. And looking back, I probably would have made some different decisions. And that was somebody who at that time had, 13, 14 years of experience in this particular world of finance. So while I had my own practice, my own wealth management practice that was humming pretty well at the time, and I was like, oh, no better time than now to start thinking about this designation. So I studied for 6 months, whatever it was, and took the test and passed, and launched Allegiant Divorce Solutions, like you mentioned. And now we're launching software and we're involved in all kinds of other projects and so on. And it's just really snowballed into this amazing experience, at least so far, stemming just from those personal experiences that I had.
Yeah, you do have a lot going on, and I want to get more into that later. But let's talk about just the role of a certified divorce financial analyst, like that designation that you got.
Yeah.
What is the role of that, and what specifically do they teach you?
Think of us like the financial specialists related to a divorce. And you went through one yourself. I went through one, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of other people that we know have. And I think if you look at some of the more challenging, difficult decisions that people have had to make, they're all related to the finances. It's what, obviously, how to handle the kids and parenting plans and things like that are important too. But are we going to sell the house, or are we going to keep it? How do we divide up these assets so they're the most fair way? How do we handle taxes along the way to make sure we all don't get crushed with taxes? Am I making the right decision financially, like in the here and now? And how is that going to impact me 5, 10, 20 years into the future? Those are all decisions that a CDFA, a certified divorce financial analyst, will help you make. And like I said just a second ago, like the attorney doesn't, half of them can't even read a financial statement, let alone help you determine whether or not you should keep the retirement account or not. And those are the type of nuanced decisions that we make. And the the training leading up to it. I mean, you have to have a particular background. You have to have experience in the financial world. There's time commitments. Like you have to have a certain level of a number of years of experience doing this type of work and so on. And a lot of the educational components of this are all focused on those types of areas. Like, how do you divide up assets the right way? How do you handle child support scenarios? What if there are things like executive compensation tied up in the marriage? How do we divide those up and ensure that everybody gets their fair share, because there's different investing schedules and there's all these other complexities? Those are the types of things that they teach you. And then now I have an opportunity to be able to help people navigate those decisions related to those types of things as they're working towards settlement.
There is a lot to unpack, and it depends on everybody's unique circumstances. But let's talk about why early planning is critical, because I know from my experience, there are a lot of people that come to a financial advisor after everything's done and settled and they say, okay, what do I do now? But they didn't go talk to someone beforehand to make sure that they set it all up right. They just figured it was all just a legal process, and they wanted to get through the legal process before they got a handle on their finances. So let's talk about that early planning and why it's so important.
What you just described is the way a lot of people do it, which is completely backwards. And I just said this in another conversation that I had a day or so ago, and I think the analogy really is like, you don't get in your car and start driving to determine where you're headed, right? You have a plan in place. You know where you're going. You know when you get in the driver's seat, probably how you're even going to get there, maybe with a little bit of help from GPS. But you don't go to a destination and go, okay, like this is like, how did I get here again? It's totally backwards. So when you're thinking through the process of divorce, which none of us want to think about, but obviously it happens. And if you're contemplating divorce, you're in the very early stages. Now is the time to start putting that plan in place. Because if you can sit with someone like ourselves and just really get a sense of like, okay, what do we have? What's at stake? And what do I want to ask for in the divorce? By having that conversation, we can put you on the right path moving forward and give you those things like, well, Linda, yeah, dude, if you do this, then this particular thing could happen. How about we do something else? Right. And because I do have a background in traditional financial planning, I feel like I'm in a unique position because I understand how the investment piece works, the tax piece works, the distribution process, and like how assets are going to be divided up and what the mechanics of all that are. Sitting with someone like ourselves and getting to that early and just literally just putting a plan in place for all those different things is going to make the process much better too, because you're not going to be making rash decision, emotionally charged decisions, which a lot of us do when you're in the middle of it. You can cut out some of that stuff at the early stage, deal with the divorce itself and that process, which is always stressful, and know that you're going to be on the back end. You know what's going to be happening and what you've planned for because you did the work up front. So if you're in the sixth or seventh inning of a divorce and you haven't talked to a financial planner at this point, or someone like ourselves that has a specialization in divorce, you better get on it. And if you're on the tail end of it, you might have missed the boat.
Yeah, and it is complicating because I don't have the CDFA designation. When
Mm-hmm.
people would come to me, I would ask them, "Are you still in the process or is everything final?" And if they were still in the process, I would refer them because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that expertise. So if it was final, I could work with them because all those main decisions
Yeah,
were made and I could take it from there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
besides waiting too long, what are the other big financial mistakes you see people make during divorce?
I alluded to it, and I want to come back to it only because I think it's important for people to hit this point home, but also not. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing attorneys either. But allowing your attorney to make all the decisions for you and be the only resource you're leveraging through the process of divorce is a solid mistake. I'm biased, of course, because I do this work, but I've also am biased because I've seen the success stories of people that work with us, and we handle the financial aspects and the attorney handles the legal aspects, and then we all come together to get that person through the divorce. It may sound counterintuitive in many ways to hire two people to help you, but the reality is that if you can keep the billable hours down on the attorney side because they're not fumbling their way through the financials, and our rate is significantly lower than an attorney's, if we can help on the financial side, you're likely going to save money. Again, I'm not trying to bash attorneys or trying to take food out of their mouths either, because they deserve to earn a wage. But what's in the best interest of the client and what's in the best interest of you if you're going through this experience is to put the best professionals and the specialists in place to ensure you get the most fair outcome. And you don't take your kids to the pediatrician to get their teeth clean. So why would you rely on your attorney to do everything you need to do in a divorce? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Good analogy.
Yeah.
And then sometimes getting a fair settlement isn't even talking about just dividing the assets. One of the things is I think a lot of people don't realize that if you just divide monies, it
Mm-hmm.
also depends on where the monies are and when you're going to get those
Yeah.
money and what your access to that money is. So it's not just like you look at the numbers, but there's more that goes into it about taxation and
Oh yeah.
timing and things like that.
100%. A $500,000 house and the equity that you have in your house, if let's say it's $500,000, is not the same as $500,000 in your retirement plan. But on the surface, and if you jotted those numbers down on a piece of paper, they would look apples to apples. Well, if you think about it, the house has some benefits of owning that property or continuing to own that property. You get things like a tangible asset that you can reach out and hold. You can benefit from living in that house if you decide to keep it. There's also tax benefits, because if you decide to sell the property later, you're going to be able to benefit from some of the capital gains tax exclusions that exist. And if you sell it as a married couple, you're going to benefit even more. But on the other side, the retirement plan, $500,000 in the retirement plan is not worth $500,000 because of the taxes that are involved. And if you need to take distributions out before the age of 59 and a half, you're going to likely be paying, penalties on those distributions, and you're going to be paying taxes at your ordinary income tax rate. And if you're here in the state of California, like I am, you're going to get hosed on the state tax too. So, and if you don't do this by the way, the qualified domestic relations order, the quadro, you could open yourself up to those withdrawal penalties and whatnot as well. So there's a lot at stake. And going back to my comment about the attorneys, they just don't understand this stuff. They think, oh, it's a $500,000 house, and you keep the house, and she'll keep the retirement account. We'll call it a day. Not so fast. Yeah, and to your point, you have to take all these other nuanced. And to us as financial planners, we're like, this is easy. This is a no-brainer, right? Like, we understand how distributions work in retirement accounts and taxes and the whole thing. Not a big deal. But the average Joe or the average Josephine doesn't understand these things. And it's our job as financial professionals to get them through it. And I just had a case, going back to your earlier comment just a second ago about referring this type of work off to a CDFA for yourself. It's a smart move in a couple different ways. Number one, you're not opening yourself up to liability or E&O insurance issues if you give bad advice because something's come up that you just aren't trained in or just don't have experience in. And I just had this experience with another client that I'm working on. Their financial advisor, who I actually know and has a ton of experience, gave some pretty poor advice relative to the marital settlement agreement that's coming down the line, and almost cost this client $400,000 because of the valuation of the pension and the house situation. And there was an alimony component, lump sum alimony component. Like, all these little nuances exist. And if you're not dealing with these on a daily basis, and your financial advisor is not dealing with these on a daily basis, you can make some serious mistakes. So that's why we try to partner with a lot of advisors just like yourself, where it's like, hey, let's just come in. We'll help with the divorce piece. You stay out of the way. They're always your client. We don't want to take your client, but we're going to support you and be a support system to you. That way, if something does come up that you don't know the answer to, you're not going to jam yourself up either.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, you mentioned mediation, and I want to talk more about that because I think that a lot of people don't realize that mediation is an option. So tell us more about that.
I'm a certified mediator now, and I've done probably 24 cases, mediation cases at this stage. And let me tell you, it is a completely different experience than those people that are litigating. It is a completely different experience. And not only from a cost perspective, but just an overall overarching experience from when they come to us and they're like, listen, this just isn't working out. We want to find a way to kind of part ways, and we want to do so amicably and so on. It's just like the energy is different when you're talking to these people, and what I've seen in historically what happens with mediation cases, which is effectively just two people coming together, recognizing that they have differences and it's time for them to go in a different direction, and they just really want to just uncouple. Right? We can shepherd them through that experience. We can help them write the agreement. We can get it finalized with the courts and for $2,000. What I've seen also with mediation is that those people are more apt to stick with the agreement when all is said and done. And I think why that is, in my experience, and just based on personal, the knowledge that I have now of watching people to go through this exercise, there's something to be said about you determining what is going to happen, even in this awful experience. Knowing who's going to take the kids on what days, and how are we going to divide up things? What do we want to do with the car and the vehicles, and who's going to cover who on health insurance? And if you're making those decisions yourself, you're more apt to stick to them than having your attorney litigate it and fight another opposing counsel, fighting another attorney, or worst case scenario, having the judge tell you what's going to happen. It's literally night and day. So I'm a huge advocate for it. I think if you can get yourself through this experience and you can mediate as much as you possibly can, it is the way to go.
And so when they mediate, there's one mediator. So when you're going through a legal process, you each have an attorney. You're both paying an attorney. But with the mediation process, there's one mediator that's kind of a disinterested third party. It's working. Mm-hmm. They're working for both people, not just one or the other. Correct?
Technically, not working for either one of them.
Okay.
Technically, not working for either one of them. I am not representing party A or party B. My job as a mediator is to, in most states, in order to get an uncontested divorce, you need to come to an agreement on somewhere between 20 and 25 different items for the judge to review that agreement, say, yes, we checked the boxes on all these things, sign off on it, and you're divorced. My job is to walk all of those clients through those 20 or 25 items and help them come to an agreement and come to terms with all of those things. And it may seem like a lot, but the kids might be 5 of those things, the houses might be 5 of those things, so it's not too challenging. We can usually get people from divorced or prepared to be divorced in about 4 sessions. about 4 hours. It's not that complicated. Unless there's a lot of back and forth and there's fighting, but we can talk about that too, how to handle those situations. But we don't give legal advice. We don't give tax advice. We don't give any financial advice. We just help them come to an agreement. We then draft the agreement that they've come up with, and then they take that and file that with the courts. It's been an interesting experience. It's been an interesting experience for sure, because I didn't really know what to expect when I started taking mediation cases, but they're some of my favorite ones simply because the interpersonal dynamics, you can see the relationship, how it was and maybe how it's going to be in the future. There's a lot up there, but watching people come, even though they have their differences, settle them and come to an agreement and move on with their lives, something powerful in that.
I can see how there would be. I think that my main concern would be, are they really getting what they're legally entitled to? Or is one partner maybe just being like, yeah, I just want to get out and we'll just settle, let's just make this work and we'll go to a mediator. How do you make sure that it's fair?
When they're coming to an agreement on something, I can't give them legal advice, but I can educate them. And I think it's important to delineate between the two. Giving advice to somebody is literally telling them, okay, Susie, you should not be doing this. But educating them could just sound like, hey, Susie, I'm glad you wanted to agree to giving up this particular thing. And, I'm sure, Tom really appreciates that. What I want you to understand is, if you do that, then this particular risk may be at play. So you may, maybe it's taxes or whatever it is, right? And there's this particular thing that might be at play here. I would encourage you, like I've told, we talked with all of our clients about this before they even start the mediation, is that, you can talk to a tax person. You can talk to your attorney. You can go, work with your financial advisor on this particular thing if you want to. If you want to agree to it, that's totally fine. Totally fine, right? But I just want to make sure you understand there are some things that you need to consider, and I'm sure Tom wants you to make sure that you get the most fair and equitable settlement. And this is not, if this was a contested case and you took this before the judge, this is maybe how the judge would view that. And I think there's something, if you can just kind of help educate them and let them understand, if it is unfair, the judge isn't going to sign off on it anyway. So Tom, we may want to consider being a little more fair, because I don't want to do all this work, put this in front of the judge, and then he or she doesn't sign off on it anyway, because it isn't necessarily equal or equitable, I should say. So I think there's little ways I try to wordsmith things and coach people through this process without opening myself up to liability or giving them advice. Because some people will just want to be done with it. And that's not always the right way to do it either. But it's their experience, not mine. My job is just to take them through it.
It's great. Okay. So I know that you're working on another thing that adds into this whole picture. So I do want to bring that up. Secure Split. Tell me about this new venture that you've got going, because I think this is a much needed resource.
We think it's a much needed resource as well, which is why we're doing this and why we're dedicating so many hours of our day to it, and frankly, so much money, because it costs a lot of money to do this project. But Secure Split is the financial tools, is going to replace the legacy tools that we have at our disposal at the moment, which frankly is just one software program that hasn't been updated in about 25 years. So it's not that great. The user experience is awful. The user interface is awful. So we're refreshing that. So certified divorce financial analysts like ourselves, because we do need tools and resources to help us look at the client's balance sheet. We want to understand the role taxes play and what are the best ways to divide up these assets, and what does alimony look like? What are the child support calculations? So on and so forth. We need something to do that beyond spreadsheets. Secure Split is going to be that tool for CDFAs, attorneys, and mediators, because they're the ones on the divorce side of things need access to these tools. Now, the attorney may not use every single component of it. The mediator may only use a portion of it, and the CDFA will probably use most of it. But we wanted to make the software available to the masses because they all need the tools and resources, like I said, beyond spreadsheets, which are riddled with mistakes, to help clients get through this process. And we're set for a March 2026 MVP launch. We're going to have a small set of initial states first, and then we'll continue to, as we build out the platform and get more users, we'll continue to build out more states. More states will come online on a monthly basis. What I've seen so far is like we're going to have an asset division module. We're going to have pension calculators. We're going to have cash flow budgeting tools, all those resources for professionals inside this software. On the consumer side, there is already software that's available that people can go to, and we're not in the App Store just yet. We're working on. It's not easy to get into the App Store, so we're working on a couple bug fixes to get into the App Store. But this tool is more focused on the consumers that are going through a divorce. And there's a budgeting calculator, there's an alimony calculator, there's a child support calculator, and for all 50 states. Now, some of these tools, like, there's not an alimony calculator for every state, but we put in kind of a rule of thumb calculator if a calculator doesn't exist. Mainly, this is just for educational purposes. This is for somebody to come in that may be working with a mediator or may not. 60% of divorces are done by people handling it themselves because they can't afford an attorney or a financial planner. So for those people, those 60% of divorces that are out there, they can go to the website, access free calculators. There's a paid versions for some premium calculators that are available as well. But they can usually get most of what they need done just using our free calculators. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to being able to educate people and help people understand what is at risk and where might some of my blind spots be, what might I be on the hook for, or what I might be receiving in child support, just so you can educate yourself and hopefully be more prepared going through this awful experience.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great resource, though, because I mean, that's the thing. Like, people just don't know where to go. And there's so much information on the internet, especially now, so much false information too. So it's hard to know what's true and what's not. So having a trusted space like that will be very handy for people.
Yeah. We audit all the calculators. I just ran another audit this morning to make sure all the calculators are using up-to-date local code, and we're at like 97, 98% of compliance with all the state calculators. The other 2% is because some of these states are a little more arbitrary, and there aren't really any. It's really based on if did the judge have a good night's sleep that night, what your alimony award's going to be. So we can't get to 100%, but we can get pretty close.
Yeah, I've seen talks about those studies where the chances of your being in court and you getting a good result are much higher if you're first on the list. The closer you get to lunchtime, the lower your chances. And then after lunch, the chances go back up, but then as the day goes on, the lower the outcomes come. It's like there's like a study that was done.
Algorithm, yeah. I can see that happening. I think some of it's just based on, again, how the judge is feeling that day.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some mindset stuff. I always have to bring the real life part into it. You talk about this money and stuff all day long, but divorce comes with all these emotions, guilt, fear, blame. Like, how do you help clients separate their emotions from their practical decision making?
It's very tough. And we even see this in the traditional wealth management, retirement planning roles that we play, right? People want to retire early, they retire later, or they think that who the president's going to be is going to dictate what happens in the stock market, or they whatever it is. Like, they let all these emotions and recency bias, or they let all these other aspects of psychology get in the way of making good pragmatic decisions. That doesn't change in divorce. In divorce, it can sometimes be even worse, because you're going from a situation where maybe you had a household that had two wage earners and two people bringing in the bacon, and now you're going to have to plan for, I'm going to move into an apartment, and we're going to have to sell the house, and how am I going to keep a roof over my kid's head? And you have all these very scary thoughts that are keeping you up at night. I mean, it's just how it is. And you're so tired during the course of the day from your regular job and being a parent and trying to deal with your attorney and all the stuff that you have going on, that it can be challenging to make good financial decisions when you're going through this unfortunate experience. And we see it like that said decision fatigue, right? We've heard about decision fatigue, and how as just humans over time, the further along in our day we are, and all the decisions we've had to make build up, and it puts us in a position where we're like, I just can't make one more decision today. Let me sleep on it, and I'll get back to it tomorrow, right? That's decision fatigue. It's so bad in divorce. Because you're dealing with all the things that I mentioned. You have all these things flying at you, and you've got to make these decisions. It's like, I can't do that. So our job as CDFAs is to try to take some of that pressure off and organize the finances, help with the negotiations, and think through what settlement structure should be, working with the attorneys, doing a lot of that legwork that can put you in a position where you're like, okay, Jamie Lima has it over here. My attorney has it over here. I can focus on my kids. I can focus on work, and I'm going to do my best to take a deep breath and operate like the CEO of my life. And that's what you really need to do. It's very difficult. I've lived it myself. But if you can just think through, like, I am now the CEO of my life, and I have got to start making decisions like a CEO would, I think that changes things and it will take out some of the emotions that are involved, and also like hiring good professionals to take some of these decisions off your plate as well is going to give you some breathing room. And I think that's it's what we try to do with all of our clients, is just help them take some of that pressure off. Not easy to do, but emotions get involved a lot in this space, a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What is one immediate financial action someone can do if they're facing divorce?
One immediate low hanging fruit action that somebody can do is to, especially if you're in the beginning stages of it and you need to start gathering your financial information, is to set yourself up with a Google Drive, or OneDrive, or whatever Microsoft calls it, or whatever Apple calls it. Just set yourself up some kind of online storage repository that only you have access to, and start organizing your financial information. You want to know everything from what you owe to what you own, what's coming in and what's going out, and all that information should be stored in that folder. A lot of people have a challenge with this because maybe they're not the financial person in the relationship, and they haven't had access to retirement account statements and brokerage account statements or 401k plan information. Now's the time to start gathering that information, because you're going to need it anyway. Every time you communicate with the courts, every time you work with someone like ourselves, every time there's a big milestone in your case, you're going to need to refresh the information that you're sharing with the courts on their financial affidavits. We will help our clients put those together, but we need the information from you. So your cell phone bill, your utility bills, like all the stuff needs to be in that folder. And then if you decide to work with someone like ourselves, you just simply take that folder, give us access to it, or upload it to our client portal, and then we can take it from there. Why I say this is a number one thing is because a lot of people don't do this. They skip this step, and then they get frazzled. They get into the middle of it, and then we have so many cases where we're getting 2 pieces of information, and then 2 weeks it's crickets. 2 pieces of information, and then it's a month goes by, because they're not organized. They haven't taken this step, and now they're just grasping at this information as it comes in and sending it to us. And it takes forever to do anything productive. And it's a gigantic waste of time and money if you're asking me. So starting early, organizing the information, and setting it aside is going to be a huge weight off later.
Yeah, great advice. All right. So tell us, who needs to find you? Who are the people that you serve?
Well, if you're looking on the financial planning side, we serve people that are trying to prepare for, navigate, and recover financially from divorce, right? So if you have a friend who is going through this experience and could use some help, if it's you who is considering it, reach out and we can help you put those first few steps in place to make sure that if you go down this path and you decide to do this, this is what you should be planning for. This is what's at stake. And this is where some of your blind spots might be. If you're an attorney, a mediator, or a certified divorce financial analyst like myself, I would be visiting our website for Secure Split. Get on the wait list And so you can get early access to this tool, but when it goes live in the early part of next year, because we are doing whatever we possibly can to build something that you can use to get more time back in your day, to serve more people, and to give your clients much more favorable outcomes without opening yourself up to a bunch of risk along the way that, like, using spreadsheets causes. So if that's your category, go to securesplit.com, and then we can join the wait list. We're actually still looking for beta testers, that people that want to get in and test this tool earlier, so they can reach out to us there to get on that list as well. But and we're building this for divorce professionals, so we're taking a ton of feedback, and we're trying to implement as much of it as we possibly can as we go, because we don't want to build something that we think you need. We want to build something that you've told us that you need and build it for you. So those are the two camps.
Great, thanks. And this, just for clarity for the people listening, this is probably being recorded a couple of months before it will come out. So they may be farther along by then, but wanted to mention that. And then you did mention a website, but go ahead and tell us again how people can find you.
Yep. So the divorce financial planning work we do at Allegiant Divorce Solutions at allegiantds.com. And Secure Split is simply securesplit.com. The toolkit for consumers is toolkit.securesplit.com. So everything's under the Secure Split brand, but professionals can just go to securesplit.com. If you're a consumer and need some help, toolkit.securesplit.com is the best place to get some free advice. And then if you can book a call with us on that site too, if you gets more complex, but those are the websites to go to.
Great, thanks. And I will put those links in the description as well. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jamie. It's been a pleasure and great information.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I have one last closing nugget. Divorce doesn't define your worth. It reveals your strength. The moment you choose clarity over chaos, you've already started rebuilding. So thanks for listening. If you're still here, you're one of the real ones, and that matters. And feel free to join me in my free community, a space for real talk, fresh starts, and women who are done putting themselves last. You'll find the link in the description. Thanks so much for listening to Real Money, Real Life. Want to see what's blocking you from financial confidence or discover your money personality? Head to the resources page at lindagriz.com for our free quizzes. That's LINDAGRIZ.com/resources. If you're loving what you're learning, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. I'm your Me Money guide to financial clarity, Linda Grizely, and I'll catch you next time as we talk more real money, real life, because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you spend it. The content shared here is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not financial, tax, legal, or planning advice and does not constitute therapy or mental health counseling. Please consult an actively licensed and qualified professional for advice or help specific to your situation.